Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. A few weeks ago, we introduced you to Hansen Wheel and Wagon Works and its founder, Doug Hanson, who showed us some of the techniques he uses to identify farm and army wagons from the last couple of centuries, as well as some of the unique characteristics of some of those wagons. On an upcoming episode, we'll meet some of the highly skilled craftspeople involved in restoring and replicating historic horse-drawn vehicles in the Hanson shop. But this week, Doug teaches us about the history of the stagecoach, mud wagon, and heavy-duty freight wagon. For Doug, learning how to restore one of these vehicles means understanding how they were used back in the day and how they developed over the years. Each vehicle offers us a history lesson of the American West. When we come back, Doug will take us on a tour of some of those vehicles and talk about how they contributed to our American history.
This is our wagon barn, and what we have in here for vehicles, I would say about half of the vehicle, well, maybe a quarter of the vehicles that are in here are Hanson's private collection. And then the remaining half and half are in for restoration or our inventory that's for sale. So we have, for instance, in for restoration, this big stagecoach here. This is the Hiawatha out of Pennsylvania, Pike County. This is an original 1870s Concord coach, and it's in for restoration and some wheel service work and such. And this goes way back. There's a lot of history on this coach, and we're going to go through and do the full mechanical service restoration, as well as redo the paint work on it and such, where the paint's chipping off and such. So bring it up to speed for an exhibit. Whereas this stagecoach is a reproduction coach built by the Amish. It's probably 10, 15 years old, and it's part of the inventory, and this is available for sale for somebody that's kind of just getting into wanting something to do parades with or something, and have a stagecoach to parade with or play with. And it's not all historically accurate. It's got a lot of improvisions to it, but hey, it's something to start with. This is a California mud wagon coach or a stage wagon. So this is called not a stagecoach, but a stage wagon. You can see the simplicity of the body design. It's really just like a mountain wagon body, but it is on leather suspension. And so this came from the line Redding and Weaverville Stage Company. This was deaccessioned out of a private collection that we came across in some trading. And just by studying some of the characteristics of the vehicle, I can see some of the design work here points to, I'm familiar with this rocker style, with this draw bolt style, that are identifiable to me as a MP Henderson. MP Henderson was out of Stockton, California. They were the California stagecoach maker. So they didn't build the Concord style like these, but they built a lot of the stage wagons and mud wagon styles. So this all original condition. It's a barn find, so it's been untouched. This particular museum, California, probably acquired this in the 30s. So it's almost, acquired from service. It probably came out of a stable into this museum. Now it's into our collection. And we utilize this to build replicas from, to study historical content. It's had a lot of wear and tear to it. The top's all sagging out on it and such, but there's a lot of good historical content. Now, notice the style of eveners that this has on it, and the type of hookups, and the wear and tear on this there. So this is for the stagecoach harness. This is a toggle eye, so there's no chain trace or no traces. It's a T on the end of a chain, yep. And they don't come unhooked. So on a stagecoach, everything was kind of loose and sloppy because you had to navigate the terrain. And so hence this type of a hookup allowed you to have 6 horses strung out in a line and go out across the wilderness, and the horses
could go slack.
Yeah, they could go slack and it wouldn't come unhooked, and the horses had ample room to maneuver the terrain, because there's obviously chuck holes and washouts and all that type of stuff going on. So that's here's just an example of having historical content and what that means to us as authentic builders, restorers, purveyors of horse-drawn vehicles. Is we want this content. See these buttons in here? That's for a storm apron. It's just little bits of it. See these leather straps?
Yeah.
This is an apron rolled up here when not in use and in bad inclement weather. This apron would pull up over the driver and cover, because they're driving day and night.
Yeah.
And so it's just, more protection and the ability to provide the service that is, that this operation had.
Has an extra rail. Is that
Yeah,
common?
well this is common.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, George, do you use a seat rail on your coach like this?
Yes,
Why do you use that?
more to secure in there.
Hold your
Security,
position,
yeah,
right? George is from Lane Ranch and he drives Stagecoach professionally.
Originally, we did not have that, but that was an afterthought right there.
Yeah.
And it's been very useful right there.
Yeah,
It's,
you didn't have it on the first coaches,
No.
but they had it on all the old coaches,
Yeah,
and that's why
yeah.
they had it. It holds you in position. You got to be, you got to be a hold of the brake or have your foot on the brake and not scattering around in the seat. And
Yeah, if there's any,
And,
if there's any movement of any
Right.
magnitude,
Yeah.
you have a lot more.
yeah, it's pretty handy to
We
have
had
something
one
to help hold you.
person, years ago, we didn't have those, and you get cantering around, and all of a sudden you're slipping all over the seat right
Yeah.
there. So that's very handy.
An important part. So this is a relic, but it is one of the original Yellowstone coaches that took the first visitors into Yellowstone Park. And so the visitors would buy their ticket to go and see the park. They'd have 4 days worth of gear with them and load up in the stagecoach, and so you're on excursion for 4 days. This is an Abbott and Downing, manufactured by Abbott and Downing. This is what's left of the Abbott and Downing stencil. And then we uncovered some lettering on the side here, and this is the Wiley Permanent Camping Company, one of 4 concessionaires that did stagecoach excursions into the park. When it was deaccessioned in 1915 from the park, the Bear Paw Ranch bought it. The Bear Paw Ranch run it for a few years, and then we acquired it from the Teepee Ranch. And so the Teepee Ranch was using it for giving tourist rides and such. And so we're pretty happy to have such a historic American vehicle in our collection. This is an original Abbott Downing Overland mail coach, and it's 150 years old easy.
Wow.
And so we're going through the restoration process. You've seen we've gone through the undercarriage, you got it all into primer, and these are the original wheels. That they've been repaired through the years, but they're the original wheels. All this is original hardware, has the blacksmith's name on it, the serial numbers on it and such. This is the original body. So the next phase of the restoration is to obviously go through the body and get it restored. Oftentimes when we're doing a restoration on this, we find blacksmith's marks on here, serial numbers, and occasionally we'll find the date. The trimmer wrote under the upholstery his name and the date.
Okay.
And I think the earliest that we've seen is 1848 that we've come across for signature dates. Now here, this little rig is my personal stagecoach.
Right.
And so this is one of the lighter mud wagons. It's only a 4-passenger. This would typically have been used as a short run stage. So maybe from the train station to an outlying post or something like that. I guess you could haul 6 in here, but it'd be pretty tight. This stagecoach I purchased for $1,000. A guy drove in the yard and we had it on the trailer and it stood about this tall. So it was all melted down, and he said, I've got the old Deadwood stage. And it came from western South Dakota on the Medora Deadwood Trail from up where Teddy Roosevelt's ranch is. And so we took the task of rewooding it. So all the hardware you see, this is all original hardware, and then of course we just built new wood for it. And so we took the little piece of the wood and irons and we laid it out on the floor of the shop, kind of like dinosaur bones, re-erected the skeleton, and then I went through and with a sketch pad and started sketching out the specifications that I could deduce from these components, from the dinosaur bones. And then got it all, figured out, and voila, there it is. So the mud wagon stage, and like I say, this is the lighter variety. This probably only weighs about 1,400 pounds, but it's equipped, like any other stagecoach, with a front boot, a rear boot, a luggage rack, and we have a canvas driver's apron on it. We got the toggles for the toggle harness. Yeah. It's all the original, hitch and stuff off of it. You can see.
So there's no door. You just step over it.
You just step over the side, and it's canvas curtains, and so very elementary. They Concord coaches. So you would advertise if you were a stagecoach operator and you had a Concord coach. You advertised that you were running Concord coaches out of Deadwood, but they might run that out of Deadwood. As soon as they got out in the country,
right, you switched over.
They load you into it, and there's a very famous painting. I can't think of the name of the artist, but they're switching from a Concord coach into a Celerity wagon. Here's a historic little piece that's part of our inventory, and this is your RFD U.S. mail delivery buggy or sleigh. So this body was common on either, but look at this. There's the seat for the mailman, and then up front here, this is where the lines pass through.
Sure.
And the little door. So in good weather, you could tip it up, but this body could be on either a sleigh or on a buggy carriage. This is all original paint, the original lettering. And so it's quite remarkable to have a piece in this kind of condition with that historical integrity on it. You can see how the lines wore through the paint and wore the wood away here a bit. So it's just pretty cool stuff when you have something that original. Here's a very collectible piece. This is a John Deere. We're setting it up with a chuck box in it, but here you can see this is John Deere's, you've probably seen this before. Yep. That's John Deere's guarantee, their logo. This is just a very nice, pristine farm wagon. This wagon is lettered Langdon Feeder Company, Kansas City, Missouri, so probably out of the stockyards. And this was to haul water to the cattle. And it's a galvanized tank wagon on. And so this running gear, we just restored it totally, put all new wood in it, but kept all the original hardware on it.
And that the steel
is all
held
original.
up. It's original.
That's all original.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we have a few buggies here. Very, a spindle seat buggy, a spring wagon buggy, a top buggy, a little miniature stagecoach. Here's a unique vehicle that unique to the Western United States is the sheepherder's wagon. Yeah. And so there you have the first Winnebago. Yep. And a bed, a cook stove, a cupboard, a lantern, rack, all of the comforts of home.
And is this a new wagon?
And this is an original running gear, and then a new bed on it, and all the content of it is what we've gathered off other original wagons. This is the keg wagon, and this is also could be termed a flatbed dray, but this with the big rack in the back and the lettering on it. So there's the old Dutch beer, right? And of course, with a flatbed, they could carry cartons or supplies or kegs on it. This is an overland freighting wagon, so not like a borax wagon, not like a mining wagon, but this was an overland freighting supply wagon. So military forts, mining towns and such. And so what we restored this to represent is the wagons that freighted into Deadwood. And so the Deadwood Trail kind of starts in this part of the country and heads out to the western part of the state. And this is Studebaker. And we built we had the original undercarriage and we built the bed for it, copying the specs out of the Studebaker catalog. And some of the characteristics of freighting, they typically, in the time period of Deadwood, which is discovered gold in 1876, they're freighting with 2 to 3 of these wagons hooked together. And so you can see beneath here, roped off there is a horn and bumper. So this is the affair where they could couple another wagon to it. Yep. But so we drove this wagon from Fort Pierre to Deadwood on the old trail. And some of the things that we learned operating this wagon, one of which was this chalk block, which came in very handy. So going down the trail, it's just hung off the wagon. But when you go up a hill, like we came up out of the Cheyenne River, and it's a very long, steep hill, and the mules had to rest quite a few times, you just drop this on the ground, and it just drags along behind the wheel. So it's an anti-reverse brake. So when you stop the mules, or they'd need to blow, they could take the weight off their shoulders. They just stand there on the hill and blow, and 5, 10, 15 minutes later, just kiss at the mules, and up the hill they go until they were ready again. They'd stop and roll against that chalk block. On the downhill side, coming down into the Cheyenne River, it's a little different story, and that's where we utilized this system, which is the braking system, which is a rough lock. Now, obviously, we have a foot brake, and you have the britchins on the mules, but the britchin is only effective on 2 of the mules, the wheel mules, right. And so that's good for little grades. It's got something a little steeper. You go to the brake blocks. And you get into something a little bit longer and steeper than that, and we'll have to walk over here. It's hanging back here, but that's the drag shoe. And so the drag shoe would be like a skid that would chain off of the wheel, and only one wheel would run on the drag shoe. And the other unit you would use is the rough lock. So this is like chaining up your semi. And see how this is worn? All the stuff is worn off. Steel's worn off it here. It's almost worn through. Well, when this is rigged up on the wheel, and you go downhill, then it is a very aggressive braking system. So the swamper would get out and rig that. You drive ahead, and that's just like pulling a plow down the hill. When this wagon entered the gulch in Deadwood, to get down the gulch, it was more than they could do with any of the braking system. So they had a big haymow rope, and there's a snubbing tree. They'd tie it around the rear axle, and they'd had a snubbing, and they'd lower, inch it down into the gulch to get it into before they got a road built. And then this, just incidentally, this big wagon, this is like a borax wagon, but it's not from the desert, it's from the mountains. And so it's a rack bed, so they could use it for a lot of different applications. So they might have been hauling boilers, rock crushers, or whatever in it. Machinery. But the interesting thing about this wagon, there was a sheet of plywood over this covering up the side.
Oh, really?
And it was still on the truck, and I told the guys, jump up there and pull that sheet of plywood off.
Yeah.
And it had this lettering on here, boss of the road. And I thought, wow, now that really is the boss of the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's probably a good six foot wheel, or a little over 6 foot. And the wagon is, I think, 18 or 19 feet long.
Yeah, the wheelbase is huge.
It's massive.
Yeah, it really is.
Just massive. And so I'm starting to acquire some of the hitch. You can see up front the lead bars. So these are called spreaders. And so see how it's got a wooden stick here and the twist link chain. So the single trees will latch onto this. So you could carry spares of these hanging on the wagon like this. Okay. And if you broke a spreader bar, you just snap your single trees back onto it.
Sure.
So it's a nice knockdown system. You carry a couple spare, so you didn't have to carry a whole double tree.
Right, yep.
You carry
the part that broke.
spare components along. This. So this wagon is one of 7 freighting wagons. Now, I may be wrong, but I think it's 7 freighting wagons they have in the Ketchum Wagon Days Museum. And so it's a mining industry town, and these wagons were used to haul ore up out of the mines down to the smelters in the valley. And you'll notice if you view inside the wagon, you see all the hash marks in the sides of the wagon from dropping ore down into the wagon. So, and it has a big thick 2x sill, and then 1 by planking on the sides, and then all the stretcher bars that go across that hold the pressure in. But oftentimes people ask, well, why was the wagon so large and so deep? It couldn't have held that much ore.
Right.
But when you think of a remote mining camp up in the mountains, in order to fill this with ore, you needed something up there filling it. And that was men and mules. And men and mules needed provisions. And that's the reason this is a freighting wagon of this depth. Hay, oats, donuts, coffee, sugar, whatever. You had to get to the top of the mountain. Picks, shovels, mining stamp, dynamite, all that stuff had to get back to the top of the mountain. And there again, this wagon is equipped with a horn and bumper under here, and all the rigging to couple multitudes of wagons together. And you see here all of the rigging here with the rough lock chains and the bitch links and the fifth links and all that kind of stuff that hooks all this stuff together that somebody with a will to achieve an enormous task was willing to do.
This rough.
So you could take this off and rig it up. So you can see on the side of the wagon right here are the links. So here's that quick link like we showed on the other wagons that's going to drop down. Here's the big truss rod, the strap iron that all connects to. There's one of these on each side, and the reason there's one on each side, you can only rough lock one wheel. Because if you do them both, it's going to skate on you.
Oh, really?
It'll try to pass you.
Yeah.
You only rough lock one. And you want to rough lock the low wheel on a slope, because it'll drag your wagon uphill. If you rough lock the high wheel, it'll push you off the cliff. And then you start seeing all the fixtures on the side, so rings and loops and staples and all that stuff. So it had to have bows on it, because if you're hauling donuts up to camp, no, I'm just kidding. Wait, when all the provisions you're hauling up to camp, you had to have a cover over it. Here's the water barrel. These hooks are for the feed troughs, because they're not going to make it up in one day. So they had to feed the mule. H.C. Lewis was the proprietor of the freighting business. So there he's got his stencil on there, and that's the original stencil that's preserved. In some of these I've found fast freight stenciled on the wagon. Now this particular wagon I didn't find it, but I did find this, or one of the guys found this in pencil, November 16th, this would be 1895,
Wow.
16,050 pounds of coke. And the smelters fired with coke, and these guys, if they're not hauling ore off the mountains, they're hauling coke into the smelters.
There's still a lot to show you of the Hansen Wheel and Wagon shop in Letcher, South Dakota. Watch for additional episodes in the coming months when we continue our tour there. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of Back to the Land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.